Street Fighter 6 is a game that many people thought would never come to a Nintendo system, and if the Nintendo system you had in mind was the original Switch, then you were actually kinda right about that. But the Nintendo Switch 2 is an entirely different beast. The Switch 2 is a system that can run original Switch games 10 times better than ever, and games that before were nearly unplayable like WWE 2K18 are now fully playable at full speed. So I knew going into Street Fighter 6 on the Nintendo Switch 2 was gonna be a way better than it ever would have been on the Nintendo Switch. But how does it stack up to its bigger cousins on the PS5 and Xbox? And, well, is Street Fighter 6 a good game on the Nintendo Switch 2? Is it worth your money? That's what we're going to talk about in today's video, but first, the like button is feeling kinda lonely, so do me a solid and hit that real quick. SF6 is a game that actually has been out for a few years on Xbox and PlayStation 5 and on Steam, and probably some other platforms as well, and it currently is the king of fighting games, attracting the highest amount of players of any of the big three. The big three being Tekken 8, Mortal Kombat 1, and the game which we're reviewing today, Street Fighter 6. So it would be a waste of time to review SF6 as a game, everybody knows it already. What we're gonna do is we're gonna review how it plays on the Nintendo Switch 2, how it looks, and we're gonna test some switch-to-switch online matches and some cross-play matches to see how it all works. Oh, did I mention? The Nintendo Switch 2 version of Street Fighter 6 has cross-play with Xbox and PlayStation, and I think Steam. I bet you didn't see that coming. I know I didn't. Well, actually I did, but the FGC community would have stoned me for saying that it was gonna come with crossplay. So I've had a few days to play with my Nintendo Switch 2. Honestly, most of those days were spent at work or asleep, so I haven't played it as much as I would have liked. However, I've played Street Fighter 6 enough to have an opinion on it. I've also played it on Steam and on Xbox Series S, so keep that in mind. So first things first, let's beat the dead horse a little bit more. Street Fighter 6 on the Nintendo Switch 2 shocked everybody when it was revealed during the Switch 2 Direct on April 2nd. It shocked everybody not just because it was SF6 on a Nintendo platform, which people thought would never happen, but because it actually looked pretty good. And then I made a comparison video showing SF6 on the Switch 2 alongside the Series S version, and the internet completely melted down over it. The Switch 2 version of Street Fighter 6 looked amazing and completely mogged the Series S edition. I thought maybe once it got released for the public it would have gotten toned down a little bit, but it didn't. The character models still look amazing even now. Now, it is true Street Fighter 6 looks really good on the Nintendo Switch 2, but the reality is that graphics are not everything, and the Switch 2 version of Street Fighter 6 does struggle in some areas, and we are going to get into that. So first we're going to talk about how the gameplay feels on the Switch 2 and how it plays online against other Switch 2 players and in crossplay. Then we'll move on to other areas. Gameplay in local versus is a very smooth 60 frames per second. I have not felt any stuttering or any slowdowns or anything like that. The offline gameplay is, I would say, pretty much perfect. What you get on the other consoles is what you get on the Switch 2. Now let's move on to online gameplay. Here you can see me roaming through the battle hub with my very smexy avatar, Casca from Berserk. This is the same avatar I had on Steam and on Xbox. You know what's really cool? I did not have to totally remake her actually. Street Fighter 6 lets you save copies of your avatar and upload them to the Capcom servers, and then using your avatar's recipe number, you can download your avatar onto a different platform if you want. That's what I did here. But besides that, I haven't felt any slowdowns in the battle hub, and that's usually where I go to find matches. And speaking of online matches, how do they run? Here you can see me playing against another Nintendo Switch 2 player, and honestly I was surprised how many Switch 2 players I was already running into on the first day. You can actually set the crossplay settings to only Switch 2, and it might take a little bit longer, but you will get matched up with different people. There's already a ton of Switch 2 players online, but the important part is the performance, and with regards to that, Street Fighter 6 Online on the Nintendo Switch 2 performs just as well as on any other console. It has reached the sort of parity with the other version that we always wanted for Mortal Kombat 1 on the original Switch, but which never happened. But for SF6, it was a reality on day one. Likewise, crossplay matches play perfectly, and the quality, as always, is totally dependent on the quality of you and your opponent's connection. Loading times are not an issue at all. Fights load pretty much instantly. And guys, if you plan on playing Street Fighter 6 or other fighting games online on Switch 2, please get an Ethernet cable. The Switch 2 comes with an Ethernet port. The rest of us Switch 2 players will thank you. Now, I did mention earlier that Street Fighter 6 does struggle on the Nintendo Switch 2, and that's what we're going to get into now. SF6's story mode is contained in the World Tour, which is a Yakuza-style adventure mode where you travel through a city and different continents, which are just small segmented areas instead of fully realized worlds like Metro City. Like in the Yakuza games, you travel on foot and take missions from your coaches or various NPCs, and along the way you follow a pretty boring story, to be honest. In fact, I don't even know what the story is. I'm skipping all the dialogue because it's just so uninteresting. I just don't care about any of it, but throughout Metro City and other areas, you will often face NPCs and bosses, and while the overworld runs pretty well, most times when you're in a World Tour battle, the game seems to cut to 30 frames per second. The resolution also drops, and it just is not very nice to look at. Like, don't get me wrong, it's not like it's sluggish or anything. It's still a pretty stable 30 frames, which is good, but it is very unpleasant to look at, especially when the resolution drops the way that it does. But there's also an entire world loaded in the background with NPCs that go in and out of that world as well. Character models in the overworld look fine, and in the cutscenes they look amazing. Overall, the World Tour as a mode on its own, irrespective of platform, I give it a 5. It's so-so. We saw what a really bad story mode in a fighting game can look like in Invasions mode for Mortal Kombat 1, and World Tour is nowhere near that boring or bad, so it's definitely better than a 0, but it's not super engaging, at least not for me. The World Tour mode on the Nintendo Switch 2 edition, on the other hand, would be a 4. So a single step below, and that's just because of the resolution drops during the fights, which you're gonna be in a lot of, but everything else is pretty much the same. If you buy the Nintendo Switch 2 physical edition of Street Fighter 6, you're gonna be getting years 1 and 2 of the DLC totally for free. It's gonna come with a download code, which, as I've heard reported, expires after 2 years, so you're gonna wanna make sure to get on that. It is $60, however. If you don't care about the DLC, there are 2 versions of Street Fighter 6 for sale on the eShop. One is the years 1 and 2 edition that we just talked about, and another is a $40 version which has only the base game and none of the DLC. But keep in mind that it is digital only. Okay, so that's going to be it for this video. If you dudes enjoyed it, you know what to do. Hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and keep in mind I'm going to be doing some online matches on the Nintendo Switch 2 version of Street Fighter 6. So if you're really curious to see what it actually plays like online, and my review here was not enough to satiate that curiosity, then make sure to watch those videos. I'm SwitchPlayed, done.